Thank you. We're live. We're good to go. Welcome back, council, members of the public. We'll be starting our committee of the whole meeting, please. So, awards and recognitions. Do we have any awards and recognitions for members of council? I'm not seeing any. Thank you. Confirmation of agenda. I'll look to the deputy clerk to identify any items to add or delete from the agenda, please.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. We do have a request by Councillor Noy to remove item C.W.3. And that item is a request to Stevenson Memorial Hospital to relocate the helipad, and that's the motion. So if we
Thank you. There's no other additions or deletions.
through chair, not from the clerks.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation.
The deputy mayor was on mute.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey. I appreciate that very much. I'll start off. So the deputy clerk has deleted CW13. So we have a recommendation that the agenda for the committee of the whole meeting held on September 13, 2021 be confirmed as amended. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor Noy. All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Any council members have the disclosure of pecuniary interest? You declare it now, or if an item comes up, Councillor Jebb.
Yes, Deputy Mayor, CS2, Build It Green Settlement Proposal. A relative owns property right beside it, and it's part of that full discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Jebb. Any other members of council? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. Deputy Clerk, can you please identify any items for separate discussion and the reason thereof?
Thank you, Chair. CW53 Municipal Comprehensive Review Update on Growth Management. We have a presentation from Director Best. CW54 Cannabis Production in the Town of New Tecumseh, update on interim control file and policy recommendations. We have direction and deputations. CS1 Development 399 27 Mill Street East, Tottenham, OLT appeal update. File PL2 10225. And we also have CS2 Build It Green Inc. settlement proposal. And also on that one, we have Councillor Jebb declaring a pecuniary interest.
Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk. I'll now go to council. Council members, do you have any items to identify for separate discussion? Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. CW42, please.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. CW41, CW53 has already been pulled, and CW55, please.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Any other council members? Councillor Harrison McIntyre, please.
Some have already been pulled, but I'll add to the list CW52. Unless it was.
Thank you. Councillor Sainsbury. You're on mute, Councillor Sainsbury.
I apologize. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to the Deputy Clerk. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time, but this is a very serious issue, CW54, and I wondered if the Deputy Clerk could apprise me of, I would like to know the legal, to have our solicitor explain the legal implications of each one of the three options prior to us making a final vote. So do we go in camera later when we do all the in camera, or do we do it, discuss it now and then go in camera for that portion?
Okay, I'll look to the Deputy Clerk. My understanding, Deputy Clerk, if you'd like to jump in, is if Councillor Sainsbury would have to ask that it be referred to in camera and the reasons therein, and they have to be justified. So can I hand to you, please?
Thank you, Your Worship, or through Chair. So if my understanding is correct, Councillor Sainsbury, you're going to be requesting that we go into close to discuss the legal implications of the options chosen?
Yes, and I believe that's all we can discuss. It's only the three options and their legal implications. And we can discuss that with our solicitor and she will respond, I assume.
Through Chair, that would be correct. And if the chair is comfortable with it, what we could do is after all the deputations, et cetera, we can actually bring that closed item to the end of the meeting for discussion.
Thank you. So we are justified then going in closed session. Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. While we're talking about it, under what section of the closed meeting regulations does this cover? Because it speaks about the legal ramifications in the report about going to the OLT and whatnot. So I'm just wondering how this qualifies specifically. What reasoning are we using to pull this in camera?
Thank you. I'll look to the clerk.
Okay. Through you, Chair. So there's actually, we could go under through litigation, potential litigation, and also solicitor client advice. So Councillor Sainsbury is requesting we call it advice from the town solicitor with regards to legal implications.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan, you're okay with that?
Not really, but it is what it is.
Thank you. Councillor Sainsbury?
Yes, I believe it's section 239, and I'm not sure between A and F which one, but our solicitor is present. Perhaps she could state that for Councillor McClellan to feel comfortable with it. Thank you.
Well, I think we need clarity and transparency on this, so I would look to our solicitor to justify the request by Councillor Sainsbury to go on camera, please. Oh, there's Ms. Butler, sorry.
Well, we have two counselors here tonight, but through your worship, to counsel, it is correct what the clerk has indicated, or sorry, Ms. Kane has indicated that there is for solicitor-client privilege and for litigation, both of which would apply in this situation to address this matter in camera.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Councillor McClellan.
If we're not up against any specific litigation though, because in the report, it talks about being taken to the OLT, the possibility of it and whatnot. And that report is obviously public. So if we're not talking about a specific case, I don't see it being an acceptable reason. We're talking about changing zoning laws. It should be done. It should be done publicly as far as I'm concerned, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan. So my understanding is Councillor Sainsbury, pardon me, clerk?
Sorry, through your worship, what would happen is when the item is brought up and there's a motion to actually go into closed, and the council can vote whether to go into closed or not.
That's what I was going to ask, actually. It'd be a council resolution to vote on that. So, okay, so when we get to 5-4, we'll make that decision going forward. I don't see any other items to be pulled by members of council. Okay, so Deputy Clerk, could I please ask you to summarize all the items for discussion tonight?
Okay, thank you, Deputy. And I'm just going to mute you so we don't get feedback.
I
Okay.
apologize.
No, that's okay. Okay, thank you, Chair. So we have CW41, request for exemption from fence bylaw number 2007, 100, 150 Nelson Street East, Alliston. CW42, request for exemption from noise bylaw 2011, 101. Loblaw's Companies Limited, 110 Mill Street East, Tottenham. We have, CW52 Site Plan Agreement D11-AL-127 689 Victoria Street East. We have CW53, we have CW54, we have CW55 Application for Zoning Bylaw Amendment, LRG Properties Inc., Deer Springs Subdivision, care of Angela Baldwin, Baldwin Planning and Developments Consultants, blocks 393 and 394, Plan of Subdivision, 51M 1082, file number DEV 405. We also have CS1 and CS2. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. So we're moving on then to item CW4-1, and I believe that was pulled by Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Norcross.
Would we mind having a motion to adopt all the items not requiring separate discussion?
Madam Clerk, that would be an excellent idea. Thank you very much. Can I have a motion, please, to
I'll move that
adopt all the
motion.
items not requiring separate discussion? Councillor Foster, second by Councillor Beatty. Thank you. All those in approval? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So I will then go to Councillor Foster for item CW4-1, request for exemption from fence bylaw number 2007-100, 150 Nelson Street East, Alliston. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Norcross. This is directed to Mr. Glanville, Director Glanville. We've had a number of conversations about this, and I've been involved with this now for probably a couple of months. So what I'd like to do, Mr. Glanville, is just recapture some of this in layman's terms to make sure that there's a complete understanding of what happens here, because when the title of a report is request for exemption, that has a number of connotations that I think need to be clarified so that this is not perceived as a free pass for what's happened here. So this fence was built without a proper permit being obtained. It's a closed fence and not an open type fence. And there's some discussion about, being it's a corner property, there's some discussion about what constitutes the front yard and what constitutes the side yard. So we are giving an exemption for the fence bylaw only that this is a closed fence. But inside of that, since the homeowners who I must admit have been very cooperative and understanding of the situation are going to agree to get a survey, and then it has to satisfy a number of conditions. And those conditions are that it cannot be in the site triangle, that it must be a foot back from the property line, and all this will be established once the survey has been completed. So this is not a blanket exemption. This is an exemption from one small part of the bylaw, which still holds the property owners accountable to make sure that the fence is compliant. And the reason that this is a problem is because it encroaches on the site triangle, and for all those residents that live in the area, this is a concern because as you approach traveling westbound along Nelson and you hit McDonald, it is blocking the site. So really what I'm looking for, Mr. Glanville, is just an agreement and understanding that this is how this is proceeding, stopping short of all the legal verbiage that's in this report. Do I have it captured correctly?
Manager Glenville.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Foster and members of the committee. Yes, you've done a good job of capturing the essence of the ask. That is correct, that the fence was built without the benefit of a permit for a pool. There is suspicion that it is too close to the property line because of the orientation of this property. The legal front is along that lot line of McDonald Street. And the fence bylaw has restrictions where you cannot be within a foot of a property line abutting a street. You cannot be within the daylight triangle. When you're in the front yard, you're restricted to a maximum height of a meter, and you cannot be of closed construction. So there's a number of things there that are at play on this property. The survey is going to be necessary to confirm the exact location. The only one that can actually confirm that without a doubt is an Ontario land surveyor, and that was part of the condition if we wish to approve that, making that conditional for the confirmation that it does comply with the requirements that we have in our fence bylaw.
Supplementary, if I could.
Please, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Director Glanville. So nothing in this request exempts the owners from compliance. And then I would just like to put out there is that there is a 6-month window of opportunity, and it does seem like a long period of time. I did some checking myself, and I know that the town has done some checking, and I think we all hate this excuse, but everyone is so backed up. The 6-month window for a survey is a reasonable period of time. Under normal circumstances, 2 or 3 months would be more reasonable. So the reason for that 6 months is because to obtain the services of an Ontario land surveyor is not as simple as it used to be. So that's the reason for that. And I think the last question would be is that in the importance of getting this wrapped up for everybody's sake, there is a legitimate safety concern because of the potential for the site triangle. So I would like to put out there is that if this situation does not become resolved in a short period of time, that we investigate, or subsequent to the survey being conducted, that we look at the possibility of a two-way or a four-way stop at that intersection. Now, I know stop signs are not to be used for speed control, and I know that Mr. Vatry has said this a number of times, but there are some interesting extenuating circumstances. So I would put that out there, that if this, in the interest of safety, in the interest of time, that we look concurrently at potential other options to make sure that that intersection remains safe. Because if we do have a lot of snow this winter, that compounded with that fence could cause some problems. So not to go on about it any longer, I think I've covered all the aspects.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Sainsbury.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The 6 months, if we find that it does have legal ramifications, then we can deal with that at that time. We would hold another meeting and a different report, and we would look at options at that time on how to rectify if it can be.
Manager Glanville.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Sainsbury, member of committees. If the survey does come back in, Councillor Foster eloquently did, accurately describe that the survey does need to be reviewed and approved. So we are not extending any approvals, just that they can go and get the survey. We will review the survey. If it does not comply, then the organization and we will enforce to say you need to comply with the requirements. We don't need to come back to committee. We've already given them their option, and then we'll continue with our enforcement process. This could end up before the courts with the prosecution. I don't think so in this case. These folks seem very cooperative, and but that is our option. If it doesn't comply, we continue with the enforcement process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Glanville.
You're welcome.
Councillor Noy, then Councillor Foster. Go ahead, Councillor Noy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just want to direct a question to Manager Granville. If the survey comes back and say the fence is not within the limits, is the owner aware that he might have to take this fence down, or he might have to do a, what do you call it? I forget what I call it. Anyways, is he aware of that? If he has to take that down, will he cooperate in that manner?
Manager Glanville.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Noy. They are aware that there is a possibility that doesn't comply. They've stated that they will do what they need to do to make it safe and to comply. They also think that it does comply in the location that it's in. But we'll give them that option to say if it doesn't comply, you see that the survey has shown that it doesn't comply, so you fix it within a timely manner. If they don't, then we continue on with the enforcement process. But my conversations with them is that they're going to cooperate.
Thank you, Manager Glanville. Councillor Foster.
Welcome.
Just thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a quick comment. I think it's important to always cover both sides of the of the conversation. And the reality of it is the people involved here have been extremely cooperative. There's other circumstances, but it's important to note that these are not difficult people. They certainly understand the situation. They've been extremely reasonable, and we have some assurance that that they will comply in the event that that there is an issue. So we're working to get this resolved as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Any other comments or questions from members of council before we read the resolution? Okay, I'm not seeing any. CW401, request for exemption from fence bylaw number 2007-100, 150 Nelson Street East, Alliston. Recommendation. Their report number ADMIN 2021-32 be received. Refer that the request for a variance to fence bylaw 2007-100 for the property located at 150 Nelson Street East, Alliston, to allow a 6-foot-high closed construction fence within the front yard of the property be approved based on the following conditions. The property owner obtains a property survey document and provides a copy to the town to ensure that the fence is not situated within the site triangle, is no closer than 1 foot inside the property line which abuts the street. Further, that the property owner applies for and obtains a pool enclosure permit from the town's building standards department. And further, that the property owner shall fulfill the conditions within 6 months of council's decision. And further, that if the above listed conditions are met, the town clerk be authorized to sign the agreement, any other documentation required to allow for the closed construction fence. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this resolution? It's Councillor Foster and Councillor McClellan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, Council. Moving on to item CW4. 2. And this is corporate services request for exemption from noise control bylaw number 2011-101, Loblaw Companies Limited, 110 Mill Street East, Tottenham. Councillor Lacey, I believe you pulled this item.
I did. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to say I don't agree with allowing this exemption at this point in time. They've requested a 24-hour pour. The bulk of the noise, from what I'm reading, would occur right in the midnight hours. There's a lot of houses, or a number of houses, that are right beside that that spot. It's caused quite a disturbance to those houses. I don't see why they couldn't have done this in 2 sections or 3 sections and need to do it in one. Is there anybody here that can answer why they're doing it in 1 pour as opposed to maybe 2?
All right. Oh, thank you, Councillor Lacey. I'll direct that to. I'll look to the CAO if you could advise me who I should direct that to.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I believe that Mr. Godfrey could make an attempt at it, but I believe our Deputy Clerk has just informed that we do have a representative of Loblaws with us that could speak to the matter.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. CAO, and I look to the Deputy Clerk to confirm that there's a representative on the line.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just, I just brought him in. So Mr. Gagnier, if you'd like to unmute your mic and turn your camera on. The council has questions with regards to the application for noise exception. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Mr. Gagnier. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members of council, please feel free if you'd like to direct any questions. So Councillor Lacey had posed a question to Mr. Gagnier. Did you hear it?
Yes, sir, I did. Yes, I did.
Thank you. Would you be able to respond, please, sir?
Certainly. These type of floors, this is a very small store for us, and a single pour is necessary to keep the integrity of the building, a slab in place. The concrete will arrive, just to kind of give you a summary of the scheduling. We're going to bring it in as early as possible on the morning of the pour, starting at probably 7 or 8 o'clock. The pouring will take pretty much the balance of the business day to complete. And once it is done, we have to wait a period of time before we can get the finishing machines onto it. So that probably would happen late in the evening, say around 10, 11 o'clock, where the finishers are going on. It's 15,000 square feet that we're doing. And again, it sounds like a lot. It is a small store though. 20,000 is our entire footprint. Once they've completed the finishing, we have to wait a period of time as the floor starts to cure. And then it is critical that we saw cut the floor immediately at the time that the product is ready. If we wait and delay and don't do it for another day, we're going to have a number of potential defects in this floor going forward, which means very time consuming and business interrupting repairs on the sales floor that are just going to become exacerbated. It really puts the floor at risk, and it can only be done in a single pour, which is how we do these stores right across the country, especially in this size. If it was a 40,000 square foot store, we would do it in 2 pours, but each pour would still take the prescribed number of hours to complete.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Lacey? It does. Okay.
It did. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look to Mr. Gagnier, if you mind remaining on the line for a minute, there might be more questions. Councillor Foster, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to suggest that what Mr. Gagnier is saying is 100% accurate. One night with some finishing machines on the concrete. Timing for concrete is important. You are coming to the end of the season. They don't need to have heat on at this point in time because it's still warm. To do those finishing machines and do some saw cuts, it's important. So for this council to deny this request at this point in time, in my humble opinion, would be unreasonable. So I would not support this request being denied.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor McCollum.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My question would be, because I'm not overly familiar with the construction process, will weather factor in? Because I've dealt with this a couple of times in Ward 6, and what happens is the noise bylaw exemption gets granted, but weather can affect pouring concrete, and residents expect it to happen on this day and evening, and weather plays into it, and then it happens, you know, a week later, a couple days later, and then that's when everyone gets upset because they don't realize it's happening. So I guess my question is, could weather affect the pour? And I did, in the report, it did say that they have to reach out to the residents. So I want to make that very, very clear that that needs to be done, because no one enjoys getting that kind of surprise.
Thank you, Councillor McCollum. Mr. Gagné, if you're still on the line, would you be able to answer that question, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Weather would not be a condition here because the building is fully enclosed on 3 sides, and our roof membrane will be complete. It's starting this week. We're obviously very anxious to get this store open before the end of the year in December. And I'm sure a lot of people in town would like to see it open as well. But yeah, we are fully enclosed. That's sort of weather conditions would only occur if we were doing an outdoor slab.
Thank you, Mr. Gagné. I can see Councillor McCollum nodding her head. She's satisfied with that answer. Councillor Lacey, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notifying the residents, do we know which residents are going to be notified? I know sometimes it's only those that are directly adjacent or right beside it. Sometimes it's better to notify ones a little bit further out because they can still hear the noise. So I was just kind of curious as to which residents or how far back we're going to notify the residents of this happening.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Lacey. I may look to the clerk's department for guidance. Do we have a criteria that must be met, or is there one in the report?
Through Chair, I'll direct that to Mr. Glanville. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glanville.
Yes, Chair and 2 members of committee. Usually it's the adjacent property owners within that area. I have talked to Mr. Gardner about that, so he has a good understanding of the area. So maybe we could ask Mr. Gardner what his recommendation was.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gagné.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, we're going to distribute flyers well in advance of the event occurring. Once we have that date, we're going to have it, once we receive approval, if we receive approval, we're going to have this date finalized and scheduled with our concrete contractor, and we will distribute flyers as directed. We will do all the immediate property and all the side streets that I'm up there every week, and I think predominantly the people most effective are on the north side, east and west. The south side is we're stepped back from Mill Street, so it's not probably as impactful for the people on the south side, but we'll definitely capture them as well.
Okay, Mr. Giddy, I think what Councillor Lacey and probably some members of council would like to have clarified, will it be 200 meters from the location, 300 meters from the location, 400 meters? Do you have a minimum territory that you will cover?
That's a good question. I would defer to Mr. Glanville if he thinks, 200 meters would put us like 2 blocks away, almost, like people not even close to the building. We will comply with whatever the council sees fitting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Glanville. Do you have a recommendation, please?
Yeah, the normal is the immediate area, so it's the adjacent property owners. If we wanted to do more than that, we could certainly do more, but that would be the baseline recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Actually, I'm looking at the map on page 28 of our package. I'd like to see at least up to Watson, which the adjacent street is Gunning Crescent East. The one just behind that is Watson, covered Watson, up to Hawk, and then just over on Sidey and Hawk. So probably just double what we normally do. The houses just past the adjacent, just so that we have enough people covered in the notification.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey. Councillor Glanville. I devoted you, sorry. Manager Glanville, with that, is that acceptable to do that? And can we enforce that, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to members of the committee, that's totally acceptable. So we'll make note of that, that we'll do the Gunning and the Watson Drive area, as well as the Magani to the Hawk. And so double in those areas.
Okay, thank you very much. Members of council, any other questions or concerns before I read the motion, please? And I'm not seeing any. So CW4-2, request for exemption for noise control bylaw number 2011-101, Loblaw Companies Limited, 110 Mill Street East, Tottenham. Recommendation that report number admin 2021-33 be received. Prefer that the request for an exemption for noise control bylaw number 2011-101 be approved. Prefer that notice be provided to residents with the immediate area, which has been described by Manager Glanville, within a minimum of 24 hours ahead of anticipated activity. Do I have a mover, please, and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Jeff, second by Councillor Foster. All those in favor, please. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much, Council. Now we're moving on to item CW5-2. Was the site plan agreement D11-AL127 689 Victoria Street East. And who pulled that item, please, for discussion? Councillor Harrison McIntyre. Councillor Harrison McIntyre.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just going to comment on the appropriateness of putting in a car wash and a gas station. I just wonder if this is something that the area actually needs at this time. As well, I think that I would like to ask for a higher standard of build. The design that was preliminary design that was shown to us is I don't know what to say about it. It's just a big gray wall. I'd like to see something a little bit nicer.
I think we understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I would look at Director Jennifer Best. This is a planning issue. Could you please provide some insight to Councillor Harrison McIntyre's questions, please?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, and across to Councillor. With regards to the review, they were reviewed with respect to the proposed development, the town's urban design guidelines, and gave some indication of what to go by. It is noted that our urban design guidelines are up for an update. And so that what the design that was proposed by the proponent were generally consistent with them.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Sainsbury.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We worked really hard with the people at the corner of Victoria and King Street for a convenience store, car wash, and what have you. And it's quite attractive. They didn't have nearly as much land to produce something attractive as they have out where they're putting this. Plus, there's a lot of money gone into the Trillium Ford building and into the OPP building. So in that stretch, we want to keep it looking really nice as you go along. And it will be more appealing to the people who are going to utilize the convenience store, food place, car wash, and so on. So I agree with Councillor Harrison McIntyre that could use a little help on the exterior, on the facade that at least faces County Road or the Industrial Parkway. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Sainsbury. Director Best, would you be able to respond to Councillor Sainsbury's comment?
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. I know that the proposed building has some like a stonework cladding. Could we have some more direction with regards to, is it an increase in the cladding on the attractiveness, or what features in particular? Is it I know the color mentioned was just gray. It is gray on gray with some brick looking stone cladding. Is there any other particular features that we could take back to the applicant?
You know what, if I may interject, Director, I I believe that, members of council are looking for, a very unique and distinguished bill that's going to be here. I believe it will come back to council for a further discussion review of it. So we're in committee tonight. Would it be okay if we were to suggest to you that by council meeting, we can come back with some suggestions to you on things we'd like to see improved or things looked upon? And we can keep the process. Would that work?
That would work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Sainsbury and Councillor McIntyre. Are you okay with that?
Yes, just wanted to be sure. I think there are other areas like in Schaumburg or wherever they can pull up where these sort of things have been done and just use those as an example, just by taking things off the computer from subdivision areas with shopping center, commercial type stuff.
Absolutely. And it's great points.
Because we only get one crack at the cat. It's there for a long time.
No, absolutely great. Are there any other comments or questions from members of council before I read the resolution? I'm not seeing any. So it's CW52 Site Plan Agreement D11-AL127, 689 Victoria Street East recommendation. The report number ENG-2021-34 be received. And further, the bylaw be enacted authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter the site plan and development agreement with 632-4223 Canada Incorporated to facilitate the construction of an automotive service station, car wash, and food establishment located at 689 Victoria Street, substantially in the form of attachment number 4, report number ENG-2021-34, all subject to the town solicitor's clearance. And everyone's waving at me. What did I do wrong?
Through your chair, you do everything right. But
Thank you.
I just have an additional information for you.
Oh, thank you. Before I call the mover and seconder, I'll look to you to go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I believe what council is looking for is that staff be directed to bring back an additional information memorandum with regards to improvements to the facade, if I'm correct.
100%, and I believe it was established that at the council meeting, our next council meeting, those would be members of council can provide input, and the director best would bring back, as Councillor Sainsbury said, alternatives that could be looked at. Would you like that written?
That would be correct, through your chair.
Okay, so you've incorporated that in the motion. You're okay with that?
Yes, so it would be that report ENG 2021-34 be received, and further that staff be directed to bring back an additional information memorandum with regards to options for the facade. And then council can provide input.
No, I think that was it. Did we capture council's wishes? Councillor Sainsbury smiling, so I will take that as a yes. Thank you. I do need a mover and a seconder, please. I suggest Councillor Sainsbury, would you move that? And Councillor Harrison McIntyre, you would second that? Thank you. All those in agreement? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're moving on to item CW-5. Number 3, our municipal comprehensive review update on growth management. Director Bass, thank you for bringing this forward tonight. It's certainly going to be a lot of discussion about this as it goes through the process. So Director Best, I believe you have a presentation you'd like to start off with. So I would just like to hand it over to you if that's okay.
Okay, I'll ask the deputy clerk to put the presentation up and share her screen, please. Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor Norcross and members of council. So tonight's a presentation on the County of Simcoe's Municipal Comprehensive Review, and I'm providing an update on growth management. Next slide, please. So you may remember this slide, but it is a reminder that the growth plan has determined the county's population employment growth, where a portion of it will be allocated to the town of New Tecumseh. The county and town must plan for growth to the planning horizon to 2051 as required by the growth plan. Next slide, please. In collaboration with the County of Simcoe, New Tecumseh will need to consider the following as part of accommodating new growth: potential expansion of existing settlement area boundaries of Alliston, Beaton, and Tottenham, evaluating the impact of the town proposed population and employment forecast received from the county, and the planned and future infrastructure services, including transportation, water, and wastewater. Next slide, please. As determined by the growth plan, a portion of growth will be directed to New Tecumseth, with Alliston being identified as a primary settlement area, as well as home to a provincially significant employment zone. Tottenham and Beaton are the other settlement areas where growth will be directed to as well. The counties developed some preliminary growth allocation for discussion as part of the Municipal Comprehensive Review growth management exercise. So the current forecast proposal sees a significant increase of around 98% population and a 54% increase in employment growth from 2021 to 2051 as the growth plan's horizon. The 2021 figures are based upon estimates. So we're really looking for feedback with regards to if the forecasts are appropriate to inform the county. It's kind of like a temperature check that's happening at this early stage. So these forecasts are draft and a starting point for discussion, and they will be continued to be refined as the Municipal Comprehensive Review continues to evolve for its completion in July 2022. The next slide, please. So 31 landowner requests for settlement boundary expansions have been received to date. This is including the former Minister Zoning Order, now known as Main Street Meadows and Beaton. And these requests represent 55% of the total interest in hectares the county has received to date. So this is overwhelmingly the most interest in the entire county with regards to landowner requests. So this translates into about 3,500 hectares or 8,700 acres in the town of New Tecumseth. The majority of the requests are within the Alliston area, with additional requests in the Beaton and Tottenham areas. With regards to, we have the report and has attachments of all three communities and a corresponding table. These requests were also at the County of Simcoe's Municipal Comprehensive Review update back in August 10th of 2021. Next slide, please. So the focus is on an integrated planning approach and achieving complete communities when evaluating settlement boundary expansions. So before I use a draft list of principles that will be developed into evaluation criteria. So due to the magnitude of requests, these are going to be reviewed and prioritized based upon the developed evaluation criteria to help council assess which ones meet the growth plan policies, including achieving that planning horizon to 2051, or determine if they should be assessed for the long term beyond 2051. So as you can see from the principles, they focus on growth targets, service and capacity, financial viability, lands being contiguous, housing, environment, public service facilities, looking at the existing town plans and documents that are in effect, agriculture, and there's some specific ones to deal with employment. And these are relating to the proximity to the existing employment areas, proximity to corridors, as well as overall suitability for employment purposes. Next slide, please. So for future infrastructure capacity, the town has retained an engineering consultant to assess future wastewater capacity of the three plants to determine how much growth they can support. Upgrades to the Collingwood treatment plant will result in additional water capacity once commissioned in 2025. So the town will continue to explore other servicing options to increase capacity. Water and wastewater capacity are key elements when evaluating growth scenarios. Transportation infrastructure is assessed part of the town's multimodal transportation master plan. It includes roads, active transportation, and public transit, all required to support growing communities. Next slide, please. Before you is the county's municipal comprehensive work plan and kind of where we are today. So the county's been working on all of these components for the past while, and the town's focusing right now on the items highlighted in green. This is the urban land needs assessment, which is really taking into consideration the settlement boundary requests that we've received, as well as the evaluation criteria, looking at the population and employment forecasts, water and wastewater servicing review, which we just spoke about with the engineering, looking at that, as well as the provincial agricultural system. Next slide, please. So for next steps, There's going to be the refinement of the settlement boundary expansion criteria, and those will be based upon the growth plan policies and the provincial land needs assessment methodology, and tonight's discussion for a report tentatively scheduled for later in 2021. Then we've got the development of growth scenarios based upon the draft county population employment forecast, evaluation criteria, the servicing report, our transportation master plan, the designated greenfield area target that was determined back in May of 50 people and jobs per hectare, as well as the 40% intensification target within our built boundaries. So these proposed scenarios will be looking at targeting for early 2022 for council's review. County and town staff will continue to regularly collaborate through working group sessions, and the county is going to commence their own consultation this fall on growth forecasts. So that's something to look forward to as well. And new Tecumseh staff are also working on other components, and as I mentioned, the provincial agricultural system. So a report is going to be coming this fall on that component of the municipal comprehensive review. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Thank you very much, Director. I'll just go around the table as I see them, if that's okay with council. So it'll go Councillor Foster first, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Norcross. Not so much questions, it's more a couple of statements. If you take the 31 landowner requests totaling 8,700 hectares or 3,521 acres and multiply that by a forecast of 50 persons per hectare, you come up with a whopping number of 176,050 people. Now, if you go back to page 1 of the report, it suggests that we're going to change our targets. Sorry, page 2 of the report, we're going to increase our population by 98%, which is, so to about 80,000 people. So we currently have landowner requests to not just in 2021, not just to satisfy up to 2051, it's 2051 plus another 120,000 people. So I think it's important when we read these reports that we understand the impacts in our decision making. Another point I'd like to make is that I read all the conditions that the town staff are going to use to determine these settlement boundary expansions. And the one that I'd like to see capitalized is the avoidance of prime agricultural lands. Because when I look at the 3 maps, it's no longer going to be Beaton, Tottenham, and Alliston, which has been, as long as I've lived here for 21 years, all we see is we have 3 distinct communities. Well, looking at this, it's not going to be 3 distinct communities. It's going to be 1 skateboard road from Beaton through to Tottenham and all the way up to Alliston. So I think that's a couple of things. In the list of criteria, I see nothing mentioned about the preservation of our downtowns. So I think that needs to be based upon, it says in the report, based upon the discussion at Committee of the Whole on these principles, as well as any additional ones introduced. I would like to introduce that one, that we certainly recognize that our 3 distinct towns, it's come up in the strategic plan, it's come up in every plan. We talk about our 3 separate towns. So I believe it's important to every resident, and I certainly believe it's important to this council that that also be acknowledged. And my last point, sorry, let me just refer to my notes. I'm sorry, that was my last point. And I guess my last point really is all of this 31 landowner requests in an election year. Won't 2022 be interesting? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor McClellan, you were up next, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is terrifying for me in a few different ways, because we have our water solution being Collingwood, who up until this point hasn't been overly responsible in their water allocation because we got surprised with that. So this MCR is going to play out, and reiterating what Councillor Foster said, when you look at the maps of these landowner requests and you read the provincial policy statement that is very firm on protecting prime agricultural land, I would venture a guess that there is a ton of land on prime agriculturally zoned land. A ton of these 31 requests. It would be interesting to see the breakdown of what the zoning is on all of these requests. This MCR is going to happen. They're going to expand, probably, obviously, if our population is growing by 98%, they're going to expand our boundaries. And we don't even have enough water to fulfill the settlement boundaries that we have today. We just sat through a financial planning session, and unless some seriously huge, big, important decisions are made, we're not in a position to accept this growth. And then we're going to count on Collingwood to give us more water that's hopefully going to be commissioned in 2025. That's a tough pill to swallow. Our infrastructure can't support the development we have on the books currently. And we're getting more of this development shoved down our throat. And the vast majority of it seems, in the whole county, seems to be, it's going to happen in New Tecumseh. We're not in a position for this. Financially, our infrastructure, this is terrifying. I'd like to see the breakdown of the zoning of all of these proposed areas for development. And I honestly, I don't see this ending well at all for New Tecumseh. This just seems, it's too much. I mean, we get MZOs shoved down our throat, and now this, and we don't even know if we have water to fulfill the developers we already said yes to. Some of these developers we said yes to when I was a teenager, and our population is going to grow by 98%. It just, I don't know, terrifying is really the only word I have for it. So we're just going to have to really pay close attention. Like, we just don't have the infrastructure for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan. Director Best, I agree with Councillor McClellan. Could you make note, though, to provide the zoning on at the council meeting, or is additional information on what the zoning is on all the property that was
Through you, Deputy Mayor Norcross, we can prepare that for an additional information memorandum, and we'll be also covering that as part of the provincial agricultural system that's also being proposed as well. That is actually proposing a number of hectares in New Tecumseh to be changed from rural to agriculture. So as noted by Councillor McClellan, there is a bit of a conflict between the two.
Thank you. Councillor Sainsbury, you were up next, then Councillor Harrison McIntyre, and Councillor Beatty, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We are just like the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike holding back the tide. And that's what happened when Metro came up to the boundary of Durham region, York region, Peel region, and so on. And they were all farms too at one point in time, because that's what Unionville was, all surrounded. The town of Markham had the best soil for farming anywhere in Ontario. And that's what growth does, but you have to learn to handle it. And that's what our staff have been doing. That's why they're working on the Collingwood water supply. Collingwood runs the plant, but they don't own Georgian Bay. There's water. It just has to be processed so that it meets MOE criteria. So I have a concern about the water and the wastewater, and I'm through you to the Deputy Mayor. Have they ever had someone with their new consultants for the MCR at the county speak to the issue of upper tier, looking after this, because they have a much bigger budget, they have a much higher debt ceiling, everything doesn't break down at the same time. So whether they vote for it is one thing, but I think they should have the right to see how it works by inviting people from York region, or I don't care where you invite them from, Durham, Halton, they've all had to go through the same thing to have upper tier. And all they do is look after sewer and water, but they look after the production. We still look after the distribution and the maintenance and that sort of thing. So that all gets sorted out. So I have no fear of anybody losing their job or anything. That just goes with agreements. It gets worked out. Second concern that I have is the fire chief may be present in the audience. I'm not sure. could it be possible at the county for the MCR to have them move up the issue related to fire services and debate it? We really need our Station 4. The insurance rates are getting right out of control. We're getting that we can hardly get condominium insurance. So when you're paying maintenance fees and you're paying taxes and you're living on fixed incomes as seniors and so on, along comes the insurance company and doubles and triples the rates. And that really hurts people on fixed incomes. So we're going to need the fire station regardless of who builds it. It would just be assumed by the county if they take over fire services. So how can that be expedited if the 16 mayors and deputy mayors think that this is not going to be done by the county? Why don't we get it off the table and deal with the rest of the things so that we can move forward with our plans and get the 14th line upgraded in the bridge, use the DCs that we're putting away from Honey Hill and Briar Hill and the industrial along the 14th line and so on, and move things along that are in some of these other reports tonight so that we can work with the land that we have. And I don't understand when we keep saying the defined boundary areas, why, when we have an Alliston phone number, we have an Alliston address all the way out to Weston Road with treetops and so on, down to the south side of the 14th line, all the way down. In fact, on the 13th line, the mailing address is Alliston. So I don't understand why the boundaries don't take us to Weston Road, further to the south, and include the smart centers, Honey Hill, Briar Hill, Greenbrier. Why is it always stop at County Road 10? Don't understand why. I know that's how it is, but I think we have to look at the bigger picture, like Councillor Harris or McClellan has said. We've got these people now. We have to deal with them and the little spaces in between and how high can we go in the air. Then we have to decide, are we going to go between these two boundaries and move south? Because growth has to be sequential. We can't keep hopping all over. And it was never intended that Beaton and Tottenham be the growth centers. It was always done by the province. We didn't ask for it, but we have to learn to live with it, that Alliston is the growth center. But I honestly believe we cannot put every car and every truck and every person in the heart of downtown Alliston. There's no parking, for one thing. There's no parking in the subdivisions on the streets when you have Mother's Day. Like this whole intensification thing, the regions to the south had 50 years to get where they're at. And they're making Simcoe County start where they finished. And we haven't gone through the growing pains. But that's why it's very overwhelming, I think is a good word. And it isn't, and all the people who've asked for it, ask and thou shalt receive. It's not going to work that way in planning. You can ask for whatever you like, but you have to fit into the plan. So the plan is the control that we have. The zoning bylaws are the control that we have, and the provincial policy statement. So we have lots of controls just because they've asked. Thou shalt not necessarily receive. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sainsbury. Councillor Sainsbury, would you like to hear from the deputy, from the fire chief? Mr.
Yes,
Hayden?
I'd like
I
to.
know you've been a strong proponent for that Station 4 and every chance you get to have that done. So I would ask Chief Hayden, could you respond please to Councillor Sainsbury? Getting a bad echo.
Thank you very much, Chair Norcross. I will take the one question out of that, out of your number of questions there, Councillor Sainsbury, and address the fire side of that, and then I will turn it over to Director Best to continue on. So your mention of Fire Station 4 in there is not related to the Municipal Comprehensive Review, but it is related to a review that is going on by a company that's been contracted by the County of Simcoe to do a fire services review on behalf of the County of Simcoe and the member municipalities. That review is ongoing, and up to today, I was involved in a meeting in that review. And I am happy to report that we are getting close to the end of that process. It is anticipated that there will be a draft report circulated sometime late next week, which will go to the county. Subsequent to that, there will be a report go to county council through the committee that's looking after the efficiency studies, a number of them, water and sewer, library. There's a number of services that are being reviewed. So the project that you mentioned there, the Fire Station 4, was a project that was in the budget and is approved. There was some holdups initially with the project, and ultimately, as staff, we felt it not appropriate to bring forward a multi-million-dollar project on the cusp of a county fire services review. So that's why we did hold back. We understood it would be a hold, and it's unfortunate, but for the sake of a few months, we really wanted to make sure that we did it right. So hopefully we'll see the outcome of that sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hayden. Okay, I believe the next one up was next member of council, Councillor Harrison McIntyre. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Norcross. I want to agree with everything that was already said from my fellow councillors. And then, you know, if we're looking at the proposed principles and prioritizing them, I would say that avoids natural heritage features or areas of natural heritage significance, including environmentally protected lands identified within the town's official plan. That would be my number one. Number two, avoidance of prime agricultural lands. Number three, proximity to existing or future public service facilities. I think if we want to create walkable communities, if we want to create healthy communities, then we need to try and build around existing infrastructure so that everybody can participate in services and everybody can access services and amenities. And then back to the previous page, a mix of housing types for all people of ages and stages. And I think that this also lends itself to a healthy community when people can age in place. And then finally supports the town multimodal transportation master plan, which we are looking forward to seeing next month or 2 months. Same idea here is, you know, let's have a community that is healthy. Let's have a community that is connected. And again, that offers people different options in terms of transportation. Good.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison McIntyre. Councillor Beattie, I had you down next. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Question about process, I guess, through you to Director Best. In the report, it indicates that the first thing that'll happen is a provincial land needs assessment, and the LNA exercise or land needs assessment exercise is what will be utilized to determine whether the county in each of the lower tier municipalities has sufficient developable lands. And if the work demonstrates that more lands will be necessary to accommodate growth, then the MCR exercise will be used to make recommendations. My question is, when is the land needs assessment work scheduled to be completed? Is it end of this year into next? And walk us through what happens with those recommendations. Are these recommendations that would flow from the province to the county, or would they flow down to member municipalities for input and direction? Or is this a component that will be completely decided at the province and or county?
Thank you, Councillor Beattie. Director Best.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Norcross to Councillor Beattie. With regards to the process, it's kind of a process that's top down, bottom up between the county and town at this point, because the province has put out the land needs assessment methodology and the county has consultants working on it. And that's kind of where they got some of the population and employment forecasts. And so from that land needs assessment, the county's working on it. From New Tecumseh, they are asking for input from us. So to me, that says that if our town council wants to have a say in this process, we also need to do our homework as well. And that's why I proposed in the update to the Municipal Comprehensive Review that New Tecumseh takes a proactive approach in looking at developing a criteria for evaluation, to looking at the land needs assessment, looking at the population employment forecasts from the county, and see if they're appropriate. Like, what is important to you? I mentioned about the downtowns and having 3 distinct communities and the growth being overwhelming. It was always known that growth would come to Alliston being a primary settlement area, and that was identified in the provincial growth plan, but there was never an indication of how much. That was not determined in the provincial growth plan. So getting back to the question is, New Tecumseh has input into the county's overall municipal comprehensive review process. The county will make the decision with regards to how much New Tecumseh will grow, and the province will be the final approver of that.
Thanks, Director Best, and a quick supplementary, if I could. I think that this is where, as a council, we need to provide direction that the growth assignments or targets be distributed appropriately and proportionately. I think that a lot of us and a lot of residents would have concerns that there would be 30 regional council members that New Tecumseh residents did not elect, making decisions on growth allocations. So I think that we do need to take a proactive position and a consistent position as well, that the growth needs to be proportionate across the municipality. Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Director Best, as well.
Thank you, Councillor Beatty. Do I see any cards, questions, or comments? I'm not seeing any. Oh, sorry, Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to add a couple of comments. When I keep looking at these maps, and it pretty much, like Councillor Foster said, all these requests, and like Councillor Sainsbury said, they're not all going to be given the green light, but it's worrying to look at them all on paper. It connects all three communities, and most of these are, if not all of them, are unserviced areas of towns. Like, we're looking at billions of dollars of infrastructure. Who's paying for this? Because as long as people have touted growth pays for growth, it absolutely does not. Growth does not pay for 100% of growth. So I'm also extremely concerned about the possible tax increases when we're, trying to put this infrastructure, kilometers and kilometers outside of town. And I absolutely agree with Councillor B. I think we need to be really proactive and pay attention to what's happening here, because New Tecumseh, there's other places in Simcoe County where people can build houses. And I don't know if the MCR is the right time, but knowing that we're going to grow, regardless, we're going to grow. We need to manage it properly, and we need to have developers pay their fair share. But we got to get on the affordable housing train, guys. We got to figure it out, because there is next to none in New Tecumseh. And as we grow, those are amenities that are greatly needed in our town. And we got to figure it out before it's too late. And it's a huge problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Norcross. I'd just like to build a little something on what Councillor Beatty said, and that's process, because that's clearly strategically the best way for us forward. So the direct question to Director Best would be, is that you've said in this report about the importance, based on the discussion at Committee of the Whole and these principles, which refers to the 20 or so bullet points. I've offered up some. Councillor Harrison McIntyre has offered up some. In addition to these bullet points and the significance of those, is there anything else from a proactive position that council needs to be on top of to make sure that our collective position as the representatives of all the taxpayers in New Tecumseh are systematically looked after?
I'm going to go to Director Best to respond to that, please.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Norcross, to Councillor Foster. I think that Councillor Harrison McIntyre was on the right pathway of selecting what priorities, because you can weight them as well. And I think that was where she was going when she selected her list. And I've made a note too for the additional one that you've added to about the preservation of the 3 downtowns. So if there's any additional ones or ones that should have heavier weighting on with regards to when staff are developing the criteria, and it's from tonight's discussion, and a lot of most of these criteria or the principles tonight were actually taken from the growth plan policies and the land needs assessment methodology. So they stem from that and kind of developed into more of a New Tecumseh context. And so we welcome any new ideas for any other principles that we could do to develop into detailed criteria, as well as what weight or ranking or prioritize if there's some top ones that should be weighted heavier. Appreciate that input as well.
Thank you, Director. Sorry, Councillor Foster.
Just a quick supplementary. Thank you for that additional information. I'm not sure if I didn't see that in the report, but if not, Councillor McIntyre has a good window into the future with her ability to foresee that. So congratulations. So that's perfect. Actually, I will go through these at a closer look and weight them and send an email related to this. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. I think that all members of council, if you have an opportunity between now and the next council meeting, please send your comments and concerns and things you want looked at directly to Director Best. We had a simple resolution here, a recommendation, but I'm going to look to the clerk. I think it should be expanded to what we'd like to see happen tonight.
Okay, thank you, Chair. My understanding from the comments from council here is we have that report PD 2021 be received, that the presentation of Jennifer Best, Director of Planning, be received, that staff be directed to bring forward an additional information memorandum to council, providing a breakdown of the official plan designations for the landowner settlement boundary expansion request received. And further, that the criteria for evaluation of proposed settlement boundary expansions include avoiding natural heritage features, prime agricultural lands, and that the development occur around existing infrastructure, includes mixed housing, and supports the town multi-module transportation plan, and distributed proportionally across the municipality, and preserving the three downtowns being Alliston, Boyne, and Tottenham.
Thank you very much. So that's the motion on the floor. Councillor Foster, did you wish to speak to it?
Please, I would like to suggest that we amend the motion to include that at the next meeting, a report come back based on the comments from council over the next week or so, that we actually see the weighting of all these individual bullet points, including any additional bullet points that are suggested by any member of council as part of the additional information memorandum next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Deputy Clerk, you can.
Through your worship, through Chair, on the third paragraph, we can say that staff be directed to bring forward an additional information memorandum to council, providing a breakdown of the official plan designation for the landowner settlement boundary expansion request received and comments received from council prior to the next council meeting.
Thank you very much. I think that captures what everybody was looking for. Councillor Foster.
Sorry, for myself, I would like to see the wording that the bullet points related to the comments from this council actually are weighted, are distinctly shown as to how they're weighted, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Foster. I'm looking at the clerk and she's nodding her head. Yes, that'll be included. I can confirm that. Thank you. It's confirmed, Councillor Foster. So I've read the motion. It's on the floor. Do we have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor McClellan. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, Council. So now we are moving on to CW5. Okay, because I'm going to do CW5-4. I'll make that the last one in case Council desires to go into camera. So CW5-5, I believe that was pulled by Councillor Foster, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Norcross. Yes, it was. We had a public planning meeting on June 16th, and there was a couple of things that were brought up in that meeting. And the one comment, actually at the time it was brought up by Councillor Harrison McIntyre, but I would just like to follow up on something. It was the notification that the Simcoe County District School Board put in referencing the concerns that there may not be schools for the children that lived in this neighborhood. And there was a couple of things that were going to be added to in the subdivision agreement in the legal verbiage. I would like to suggest that, coming from Mississauga when I was younger, The approach runways for the airport affected a lot of the development east and west of Mississauga. And I distinctly remember driving into areas where subdivisions, and they had a significant sign that you really couldn't miss, which, in addition to having comments in the subdivision agreement, there was never a concern from people to come back to say, why am I sitting in my backyard and planes are landing over my head? And I think this is a significant enough issue from the Simcoe County Board of Education that it warrants not just legal wording in the agreement, but signage at the entrance to these future developments, indicating that there is a potential problem here. And I think that would mitigate hopefully some concerns from people that were moving in with young kids. And so I would like to see that enhanced if this is passed, that signage, significant signage, not a 2 foot by 2 foot election sign, but significant signage that most people couldn't miss. That's the point one. And the second point I'd like to make is we had quite a conversation with, I apologize, I forget the lady's name who represented them. And I asked a number of questions about parking, and specifically it was about the garage. It was about the setbacks with the house moving closer towards the road. The length of the driveway would be shorter. And this is a common occurrence with all of these applications, that they're looking for less and less space, and people have more and more cars because they're commuting. And then we end up with people parking on their lawns, people parking on the street, and we have an excessive number of complaints. And I read in the council comments, it refers to townhouse parking, and it says the applicant addressed the topic to council. Well, I took half an hour yesterday and I went through the June 16th meeting, and I'm positive that at that point in time, if that's what they're referring to, the applicant did not address the topic to council, because I asked the question and I wasn't satisfied with the answer. So I would respectfully ask, if it has been addressed, could someone please explain to me how it is? And if it's not been addressed, then I would like to understand why it refers to it being addressed, please.
Thank you for the questions, Councillor Foster. I'll send it to you, Director Best, if you could reply, or defer it to Mr. Abbots.
Okay, I will take the first point on the signage for the school board. This is common in the GTA that a large sign be put on school properties, informing them that it may or may not be a future site. So I can work with engineering to add that to the subdivision agreement clause as well, to install a suitable signage. And with regards to the parking, my understanding is that the application meets the parking. And I know that parking was also raised during the comprehensive zoning bylaw, that with the council has directed planning staff to undertake a town-wide study. And so that was something from a previous additional information memorandum. And if council directs staff, the parking study could be expanded to also evaluate the residential parking situation in the town of New Tecumseh, which has been raised by council members in the past.
Thank you. I'll look back to Councillor Foster, please.
Thank you for your first comment, Director Best. I appreciate it. First of all, I don't want to see any more studies related to the parking. I think it's plainly clear to everyone on this council, and it's plainly clear to most people that present to council, that there is a problem, but it would seem to me as if nobody wants to directly address it. So I'm going to raise it again. If the answer is they've met the 2 parking spaces, which I know under the designation 1.75 is acceptable, I understand that, but I made the comment that in theory, it sounds good, but in the practical application, it is horrible. And it is just, so if that is the answer, and if that is their position, I have no interest in supporting this bylaw amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Are there any other comments or questions from members of council? Councillor Harrison Mack.
Thank you, Chair Norcross. Thank you, Councillor Foster, for bringing that up. I was also going to make reference to the clause from the Simcoe District School Board about not being able to guarantee accommodation in local schools or at all. And I think that that's an interesting suggestion, provided that the people, and this is not, you guys know I work for a literacy organization, provided the person can read. So there needs to be verbal communication of some of these agreements from the real estate agents, from everybody, because that would be a make it or break it thing for me if I was moving into a new community and I knew my kid had to take an hour plus bus ride to go outside of the community and wasn't going to be going to the community the same as the rest of their kids. I would want to know about that. And the concern about parking is valid. I mean, we all know this because we deal with those issues day in, day out from subdivisions. It's a major issue, and speeding and all those sort of things. So from a planning perspective, I guess my question is there anything that we can do? I know that they're putting in a condominium, and part of that is to put in more houses and have smaller, like narrower streets. Where can we ask for more here? Is there ability for us through planning to ask for more?
I'll direct that question to Director Best, please.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor Norcross, through you, Councillor. With regards to the parking on this particular application, they do meet the parking requirements, and they have proposed some visitor parking. So they are exceeding it in this way. And what I was alluding to with regards to the parking study, it would come up with some recommendations in order to how to deal with mixed housing with regards to having townhouses, semis, singles, skinny singles or small singles, however you want to call them, with regards to how we could improve the parking situation in New Tecumseth. So this application does meet the parking, and they've exceeded it in order to help the situation out. And granted, there is a bigger parking issue town-wide.
Yes, thank you. I think at the last meeting, and maybe, Councillor Foster, you said you went back through it. I was hoping that we were going to get a more thorough answer from the Simcoe County School Board about this provision. I mean, it does say in the report that this is a standard clause that they're putting in, but it doesn't sound like a standard clause considering that we've never seen this before. Did we reach out to them, and did we get any response?
Through you, supplemental to Deputy Mayor Norcross, to Councillor.
Please.
The Simcoe County the school board has been putting these clauses in other communities within the county, and this is something newer coming to New Tecumseth. But this is something that has been going on in the communities of Bradford, for example, and Barrie and that sort of thing. So it's new coming to this municipality. I will say from my past planning experience in York Region that this has been a standard clause for about 20 years in purchase and sale agreements, as well as information presented in sales offices and information on the board's website. And they do put large signs up on school sites that are potential, because sometimes they're not always built and they're switched back into housing or whatever. But that is something that's coming up when you having a more urbanizing community. That school accommodation unfortunately cannot always be had to you. So look at your local school. It's not always the one children may be directed to. They may have to go to a holding school, and as you said, maybe bussed out of center. And this is a warning clause to parents in both the subdivision agreement and purchase and sale. And with Councillor Foster's suggestion, we can send this along too in the subdivision clause to add signage as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I had Councillor Sainsbury, then Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We've been a long time getting our Catholic school at Treetops. There's a 5,000 population equivalent. I still can't believe that the public school board didn't take land instead of driving the children to Cookstown or driving them down to Beaton or driving them into town when they could have gone to school right where they were at and walked. I was always disappointed that that didn't happen. So at one point in time, I think we were asking for the due diligence part of solicitors who help these purchasers close their deals, that clauses like the school, the turf, like the soccer fields, the dog parks, they all look lovely on the wall when you're buying your house and you think, oh, that'll be neat, but they don't realize it comes to phase 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, or their kids are in high school before they have to walk their dog in the dog park. So some of the stuff is coming, I think, too far down in the phases. We should ask for it sooner for the first couple of phases when people move in. That's a lot of houses with intensification that we're not used to. And a lot of children come from those homes. So that was my one thing. And we used to put the clauses in red ink so they couldn't say they missed it related to this school, no school issue and so on. So that whatever the clause is related to that, plus the sign going up, as you say, on the property, that pops it right up. They can't say they missed it or their lawyer missed it or where is the school. They just have to read the subdivision agreement of what they're signing on to purchase. They just get excited about the model of home. And then we get these, the troubles later. And about the parking, if the garages could be deeper, or if there's an end on the garage where you can store the bicycles and the rakes and the barbecue, because we use that garage space as a parking space, but everybody knows the car's not in it. It's out in the driveway or on the lawn or wherever they put the cars on the street until winter comes and they can't park on the street. And that's when the real trouble starts. So if we could do something with the width of the garages, the depth of the garages, so that the normal things you store can be there and the car can still fit into the garage, or must fit, because once you change your bylaws, then we can go along and monitor it. Thank you.
Thanks you, Councillor Sainsbury. Councillor Lacey, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just want to clarify the school clause. It states here that's the Simcoe County District School Board. Does that clause also extend over to the Catholic School Board? One of the reasons my concern is that people will come in, they'll notice that this clause may be here for the public school and say, oh, well, I can just send my kids over to the Catholic school down the street. And then the Catholic school's dealing with the same type of situation where they're overcrowded in that. So that I think it should cover both school boards. We should reach out to the Catholic school board if not. And then the second item is, can we add a clause that there is an active railway beside this subdivision with the train whistle actively going at all times of the day and night? So.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey. Director Best, can you please answer those questions?
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Norcross, to Councillor Lacey. With regards to the Catholic Board and the Simcoe County District School Board, the school boards actually all operate independently, and there's 4 school boards in Ontario. So all of them have been circulated, and whenever we get comments back, we put in the clauses as requested. So one has not come through the Catholic School Board or the other 2 school boards either. So if it is something, we would have to reach out to the Catholic Board to see if this is something that they would be comfortable with or not. And with regards to the railway crossing, I'll check with our engineering department if that is standard clause, given the number of trains and railways we do have in New Tecumseh, if we can put something like that in there, if it already isn't.
Thank you very much, Director. Do I see other comments or questions? If not, I'm going to call the motion. Oh, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. One quick question to Director Best or Mr. Abbots, whoever. On page 5, there was one area. It said, notwithstanding the minimum lot area, frontage, and yard setback provisions, the lot area, lot frontage, and all setbacks shall be measured from the external boundary of the property and not from phasing limits. Can someone please explain that to me so I understand exactly what that means?
Director Best, please.
I can take this one, Chair. So it's
Okay,
fair to Councillor Foster. So what that means is because it's a condo development, so rather than the setback being to the entire condo development, it would be to basically be where the road line is. So if you look on the site plan, you'll see kind of like a road allowance, and it would be to that limit. That would be the kind of, we'll call it quote unquote boundary line for a particular lot. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Pretty much so. I just want to understand the wording, not from phasing limits.
So
So,
the phasing
go
limits
ahead.
would mean the extent of the entire development, because it's a condo development, and the way it's being designed, it wouldn't function as individual lots. It's one entire condo development, and then within inside is where all the kind of units and individual lots are broken up. So it's not like a traditional plan of subdivision where there's individual lots of record. It would be a block on a plan of subdivision, and then within that block, it has its condo development. I don't know if I explained that very well, but.
Councillor Foster?
Thank you kindly. Just one last quick question is, I'm gonna have to draw this out after the meeting to clearly understand what you're saying. But putting this down, does this essentially make the lot seem even smaller? That may be a strange question, but does that make sense?
Through the chair to Councillor Foster, I don't think it changes the size of the lots. I think the lots would still comply with any standard lot size with through our zoning bylaw.
Okay. Thank you kindly for the explanation.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Okay, council, so we have item CW55, application for zoning bylaw amendment, LRG Properties Inc., Deer Springs Subdivision, care of Angela Baldwin, Baldwin Planning and Developments Consultants, blocks 393 and 394, plan of subdivision 551M-1082, file number DEV 405. The recommendation that report number PD-2021-49 be received. Prefer that a bylaw be enacted to amend zoning bylaw number 2014-126, substantially in the form included as attachment number 1, report number PD-2021-49. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Sainsbury, may I have a seconder, please? I don't see a seconder for that. Oh, I do, Councillor Jeff. Thank you. All those in favor? That does not carry.
It fits the plan.
Yes, we are moving on. Okay, so our next item up is, I'll go back to CW 5.4, and we have 3 deputations. I would like to, with the permission of the clerk, is we have Guy Bonney, Jean Userban, and Peter Gross. I know there's consideration for council to go in camera. Would it be possible, please, to listen to the 3 deputations before we make a decision as to what how council will handle it? One second, council. Council, I'm going to revisit 5.5 to make sure that there's no misinterpretation here. I'm going to read 5.5 again. The report number PD-2021-49 be received. Prefer that a bylaw be enacted to amend zoning bylaw number 2014-126, substantially in the form included as attachment number 1. Report number PD-2021-49. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Sainsbury. I have a seconder, Councillor Noy. All those in favor of this amendment, please, this motion. I see Councillor Jebb, Councillor Sainsbury, Councillor Beattie, and Councillor Noy. All those opposed. Sorry, over here. I see Councillor Lacey, Deputy Mayor Norcross, Councillor Foster, Councillor McClellan, and Councillor Harrison McIntyre. That motion is defeated. Thank you. I just wanted to do that for clarification so that we are on record, please. Thank you for your understanding, council. Now we go to CW5-4. Say we have 3 deputations tonight, and I will look to the deputy clerk. Our first one, it's cannabis production in the town of New Tecumseh. Update on intern control bylaw and policy recommendations. The first presentation is from Guy Bonnie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll bring in Guy Bonnie.
Thank you.
Mr. Bonnie, if you can turn on your mic and your camera, please.
Hello, Mr. Bonnie. Welcome tonight.
Hi, Deputy Mayor Norcross and Council. I know it's getting late, but anyway, I guess I can go ahead and start now.
You have 7 minutes, sir. Please get out.
All right, thank you very much. I'll just stay on the first slide here for a second there, Barb. Thank you. The reports for you include a memorandum written by Ron Palmer of the Planning Partnership. It provides misleading statements that do not consider some very important sections of provincial policy. They wrongly consider information issued by a ministry that is not aligned with provincial policy, even though that ministry is bound by the Planning Act to operate and align itself with provincial policy. The Cannabis Act only came into effect a few short years ago, and as of today, it is not meeting the purpose of which it was created. This alone should raise red flags as you may move to deal with the matters before you. We, the residents of the municipality, thank you, the members of the council, for listening to us and taking the necessary time to ensure the decisions you all make are appropriate in line with provincial policy. The Planning Partnership, led by Ron Palmer, for this project have developed the reports and recommendations by focusing their attention on definitions found in Part 5. And they have wrongly and persistently promoted the establishment of this use on agricultural resources. They have not referenced other parts of provincial policy that in fact support prohibiting the use on agricultural resources. It is unethical for a planner to limit the provincial policy information being presented to you, and I strongly believe council should not accept Mr. Palmer's memorandum, background reports, or recommendations. The staff report was prepared with reference to the Planning Partnership information, and I've stated in the past I have concerns about accepting any of these reports when they do not sufficiently reference all pertinent parts of provincial policy. If you can move to slide, I think it's 3, Barb. Yes. Here I'm just going to speak to the highlighted sections in the different colors. So the area highlighted in yellow, I cannot find any reference to harvestable in the PPS. However, when you read Part 4 of the provincial policy, it becomes very apparent that there is a distinction between the types of crops, and that distinction is they must produce food and fiber to occupy agricultural resources. The area in green, the statement includes the word may, and I promote that this statement can only relate to the production of hemp permitted to grow in its natural form throughout its entire growth process, which includes pollination on through to producing seed that will exhaust the plant and leave good fibrous plant stock. If the activity does not produce food or fiber, it must not occupy agricultural resources. Area highlighted in blue, the inclusion of the word fur must be stated along with the primary purpose of agricultural resources being managed for food and fiber because without it, some may conclude that raising of other animals might be limited to just fur production. This wasn't necessary, but I suggest it was done for clarity purposes. Again, Part 4 requires agricultural resources to be managed for food and fiber production, and definitions must be interpreted along with Part 4 of the remainder of the PPS. Area highlighted in red, this statement references situations that have not been disputed because they don't cause adverse impacts or mimic natural resources that could be considered a measure to revert lands to their natural state. They have been allowed to exist because municipalities and ministries typically only react to situations on a complaint basis to resolve disputes. It references the production of tobacco, and in this case, I'd say that tobacco was commercially produced in Canada in the 1800s, long before the province was organized enough to run under provincial policy. You cannot make current day decisions on cannabis matters that were only legalized in 2018 based on something that was permitted in the 1800s or exists today, because no one disputes the situation. It is outrageous to see staff attempt to connect the product to foods, saying there are products that originate from cannabis that are edible. Humans orally ingest all kinds of non-food products, and some are known to have taken arsenic if they no longer wish to live. Suggesting gummies containing THC or CBD are food is much like saying it's okay to sit down to a plate of tranquilizer pills for dinner. Option 2 on page 8 of 17 is contrary to PPS for all forms of cannabis production that do not produce food and fiber. And for example, there's 3 out of the 4 that don't produce food and fiber. And there's one is hemp for CBD, the other is marijuana for THC, and marijuana for CBD is the third. It would appear time has run out to deal with this matter within the current interim control bylaw. The reports and memorandums before you have significant flaws, and I believe it is important for council to reject these documents and ask staff and the consultants to bring material forward that supports council's desire to deal with this matter. I suggest council at least refuse to accept the current reports and memorandums and present a motion to send staff back to continuing work on the zoning bylaw amendment that is aligned with provincial policy and the desires of this council and its residents. Council decisions must not be made based on the opinion of a ministry that is misaligned with PPS. And I'll end my presentation now with something that just got sent to me just recently. And I'll leave you to think about that slide. And if it's possible, I tried to send a video to Barb today, but she tells me that she can't actually access the CTV Barrie site to review this video. So if you would like, I could always share my screen and let the video run. It's only about a minute long.
Through your chair.
Sorry.
Through your chair. Unfortunately, it's actually not, we can't access it. What it is, it's a security issue. We don't permit links to outside sources. The other thing is, according to policy, we do not allow presenters to actually provide their own presentation. So we wouldn't permit this. That would be council's advice.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bonney. That's your 7 minutes. So I'm sure if you would, if the clip you had was sent in, I'm sure council members can access it themselves and review that information you sent us. So thank you very much, sir. Our next presentator will be Jean-Yves Urbain, and I'd look to the clerk to bring that individual in, please.
Thank you, Chair. We're just going to move Mr. Bonney back into the waiting room. Thank you. Just bear with me for 1 minute. We're just having an issue moving.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, if you could, please, that would be great. Oh, there we go. Okay, through your chair, here's Mr. Urbain. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Urbain. You have 7 minutes for your deputation, please, sir. If you'd like to begin.
Good evening. I did the review of the report that our planning department prepared, but also I did the review of Mr. Peter Gross, that I believe would be the next person to present the letter that he have sent to council on August 25th. And both documents have exactly the same issue, in the sense that there is, it's probably hard to say, but cherry picking of information and not sharing exactly what is in all the documentation. So both of them arrived to the conclusion right at the start that cannabis is a crop. It is not in regulation. It is not in legislation. It is an opinion. And even the Ministry of Agriculture say may be considered as agriculture use. So it's just not black and white. And Mr. Gross and also our planning department are starting on that base to say it is a crop. So let's go on with life. So that's just the main base that I have problem with, in the sense that it is not food. It is not a fur. And also well and above that, and the PPS, it's just really marked is we have to minimize the environmental and social impact. We're totally silent about that part. And if we're close to that one of those facilities, they, excuse my French again, they stink. And nobody really wants to live there beside them. And also part of the PPS is also, we say, provide for recreation opportunity. I don't think you're going to be willing to have a park or a school or any other facility near those sites. So they don't meet the requirement of the BPS. And so to arrive to my recommendation, because I know that there is time and time is flying, what I would strongly suggest to council that you accept option number 1 and option number 3. And that will give us more time to have a better definition, in the sense that the provincial government did not have a position. Ministry of Agriculture have an opinion, and we have to wait until we see something happening on the LPAC. And I know that there is some coming very soon, and hoping that it's going to be some clarification. And during that time, we have to live. So I would suggest that you pass resolution 1 or option 1 and 3 together. I'm done for tonight. I'm trying to keep that thing short.
No, thank you very much for that, Mr. Urbain. Our next speaker is Mr. Gross, Peter Gross. Is Peter, I'll look to the deputy clerk.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Gross did not attend tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you to the presenters for making presentations tonight. I believe there was a desire to go in camera to discuss that, and I believe that motion was being made by Councillor Sainsbury. Councillor Sainsbury, are you making that motion? Okay, so we have a motion to have further discussions in camera, which would be, I'll read the motion once we have a general consensus of council. Is there a seconder to have this discussion in camera? That's Councillor Noy. So the motion on the floor is to move this in camera to have discussions with our solicitor. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Through your chair, just for confirmation, it would be solicitor client advice and litigation, potential litigation. Thank you.
Thank you. And you know what? I just got Councillor McCall. If I missed you, I apologize, Councillor. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I was just going to quickly say, if we're talking about, sorry, zoning changes, that it should be a public conversation. I think we're just going in camera to play the what if game. And I don't think it's fair. I think if we're talking about changing zoning, we should be doing it publicly because it affects everyone publicly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. Apologize for listening there. Okay, so we have that. So I'm going to, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to committee of the whole motion to go into closed session. So I have a recommendation that the committee of the whole convene the closed session at
9:43. Your
Thank you very much. Anything, Scott, thank you. At 9:30 p.m. to discuss. We have 3 items. So one item is item CS-1, Development 399-27 Mill Street East, Tottenham, OLT appeal update. Item CS2, Build a Green Inc. settlement proposal. And then the other item will be CW5-4, cannabis production in the town of Newton Council's update on control bylaw and recommendations. So can I have a mover, please? Reconvene. Thank you, Councillor Beattie. Thank you, second by Councillor Harrison McIntyre. All those in favor? Thank you, that's carried. And I think it takes about 7 minutes.
Through you, Chair, just quickly, the item that we're actually going in with regards to zoning bylaw would be, legal implications with regards to cannabis. The rest of the item with regards to the zoning bylaw would be brought out of closed and discussed in public afterwards.
No, absolutely.
Awesome.
Sorry, I was assuming that the legal part would go first. Once we had that discussion, then the whole thing will be debated out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay, good. Sorry, I maybe should have communicated better, but I thought I got it. So, okay, so we need about 7 minutes to do the transition. 5 minutes.